Welcome to the Washington Tattooed Podcast, where we champion education, celebrate community, and unite the very best of humanity. Fueled by world-class military precision and cultural excellence, Washington Tattoo produces unforgettable immersive experiences, creating an atmosphere for people, organizations, and businesses to connect, network, and build impactful relationships. We invite you to listen to this episode of the Washington Tattoo Podcast, where the world's musical traditions come to life. Thank you so much for joining us. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Washington Tattoo Podcast. Here today, we have my co-host, Stu Warmington. Stu, how are you today?
Very good. Yourself?
Good. How was the weather in the good old UK?
It's the north of England. It's just great all the time.
What's great about that is I think I get the same answer every single time we talk about it.
Well, it doesn't change.
Well, and we have a super special guest today. We're so excited about this. We have Paula Monahan, or also formerly Paula Braden, and she's over in Northern Ireland, and we are so excited to have you, Paula. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
So Paula and I have met and crossed paths on different occasions over the years, and honestly, I have always been blown away, not just with her talent, but her organizational skills, her passion for teaching. And we were over at the World Pipe Band Championships this past year and got to reconnect again. I got to see some of her students, and quite frankly, I was just even more enthralled with her and her family and just her passion for life and teaching the next generation. So we really wanted to grab a great conversation today with Paula and then dive right in. So I think, honestly, from me to you, Paula, this is really an incredible time for me. And I'd just love to start with just how you got started in pipe band and how did you get brought up in it?
Music was part of a tradition in our family. My mum and dad both were part of a pipe band. My father a side drummer and my mum a tenor drummer. So it was a very natural progression for us as a family. I suppose as children, it was always being played. We were always part of a pipe band fraternity. But my brother was a drummer. He was older than I, Daryl. And he got away every weekend to pipe band competitions, and I was left at home. And whilst I love staying with my granny, I was like, I have to get into something. This is something I need to do. So I said to mum and dad, like, I want to be a drum major. And the pipe major at the time said, I think she'd be wonderful. She's very musical, and you'll give her a try. He says, if I give her roller skates 2 days and she's finished with them, if I give her ballet shoes. So I was like, no, I think this is going to be me, Dad. I think I've got this. And they bought me a mace, and I was age 7. And that's how I started. That's the story. And I never looked back from that minute. It wasn't that I looked at it and thought, oh, that's it. It was definitely a passion from the get-go. I learned to drum and pipe, and all that kind of followed suit as well. So it was a very natural transition into the pipe band world, but certainly something that the passion has grew and grew within me. So it's definitely a love for life.
Well, and I think, Stu, you had something similar with your background as well, right? Coming up with your parents and everything.
Yeah, so my father was a drum major in the military. And then, so that's, you know, when I joined the Royal Marines, that was my main focus. That's what all I wanted to do, even at school. Couldn't think about anything else. You know, that's what I wanted to do. You know, got in the Royal Marines, got to be a drum major. And then I decided that when it got to that point, it then shifted for me to a desk job with going out doing a little bit of drum major and less performance. So I then sort of handed that role back and carried on performing as a drummer. But I understand exactly where you're coming from. You know, that relationship right from the start of, you know, when you get your first mace all the way through to, you know, where you are now. And, you know, I can see how important that is to you in your life, and obviously all your other students as well. So obviously we've had some issues, should we say, over the past couple of years with COVID and what have you. How has that affected your marching arts, and, you know, how did you prepare for it? Or not prepare for it?
Well, do you know what? It was actually if this is the right thing to say, it was a very welcome time for me to step aside from my teaching class and to continue a lot more online, because my teaching was always face to face. I was always very hands on, and suppose my children that came to me, they were 5 and 6, so I was such a hands on tutor. So I would have showed them by directing with my hands and by, kind of articulating my direction. So when I had to move across to the world of Skype and Zoom, it was really different because my hands were moving, but nothing was able to be reciprocated on the other side. So it really broadened my way of teaching in terms of, I did do it the odd time, but naturally it would have been, I'll come to you, you come to me. So it wasn't something I prepared for. I just had to kind of work through the process and get the technology working, especially if you were outside. If I had to show them something and maybe it was raining and you didn't want to cancel that call, because if I was taught a chap in Australia and the time difference was obscene, so I'd have been up really early, or he would have been up before school, so it wasn't a chance, oh, it's raining outside, I think we'll stop. So for my own class of drum majors, because I was starting to go through the RSPBA adjudicating process for them, and they were coming into the seniors, it was a natural progression for me to step back and let them kind of use that mentorship they'd had for 10, 15 years and really push themselves in their own direction and try to channel and get in their own pupils. And for me, I became a better performer when I taught, because I was learning those basics again as I taught. So that for me, I wanted that to be fundamental in their journey moving into the seniors. So it was a natural progression. I missed that definitely at that hands-on approach, but for them, it gave them that kind of natural step back that I don't think I'd have been able, or they would have allowed me to do on a normal time. So it had its perks and it had its disadvantages, but overall, it taught me a few lessons as well in terms of different techniques and teaching. So
is that something now you use moving forward, new technology, as opposed to pre-COVID?
And certainly even for events now, like we have a WhatsApp group of, we're doing an event now in the last week of March. So the WhatsApp group has constantly been shared of videos, and we're recording stuff. And beforehand it would have been, let's meet up and do it. But now, like even after yesterday's rehearsals, we have them all on the WhatsApp group, kind of highlighting, and you're writing in what notes that you want to do. And it's just a different, and I suppose a bit more, efficient way, because people are getting the actual detail. They can refer back to that, because 9 times out of 10 when you leave, you're thinking, what did Paula tell me again? And next week they're back to me and say, Paula, I couldn't get working on that because I couldn't recall that, or I didn't remember that. So
fantastic.
Yeah, now you've got the technology right
there.
You get the recording.
It probably was already there, and we just never utilised it to its potential. So it's definitely pushed us in that direction, whereby we can share those videos and have conversations in relation to different points of that. So
I mean, it's weird because before COVID, nobody even heard of Zoom, and then all of a sudden, that was it. It was everywhere, and everybody's using it for everything. And people work from home, and people couldn't cope without it. Before that, it's always been around. Very strange.
I know. And you just had to get used to looking at yourself on the screen, because you're like, I was moving my hands constantly, and then I used to laugh and think, Paula, put your hands under your legs and don't move them as much. But I was always a good communication. So for me, talking is never an issue, but it was just me having lost that hands-on approach that I found very important whilst teaching. But you adapt.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, I think it's for us. I mean, Stu and I, we get to talk with so many folks. And honestly, I think today this is a huge honor for us, because I don't know, Stu, I don't get to talk to a world champion drum major every single day. So I think this is really special. And I'd love to kind of hear some of that journey. Like, yes, you started off, you were brought in with your family. You had to have your own dedication, your own practice and all of that. But could you walk us through maybe like the year or two before, like what prepared you? How did you get prepared? What was the mindset just to get to that level of world-class preparation, and then at the end winning the championship?
Yeah. I started competing at the age of 8. So at that age, you had a lot of parental support. Mum and dad were very hands-on. My brother was involved. We spent from May to September every weekend at a competition field. So every night after school or after dinner, we were the big tape recorder. Those days were big, massive boom boxes. And my mum or dad took their turn in coming down and marching up and down behind me. I had a fantastic mentor myself, Alan McBride, who was world champion himself. So for me, I had a lot of great support and intel, but I had to have that discipline, and I had that because I had a burning desire and passion to be the best. Now, it didn't always mean winning, because winning was always just a kind of the novelty at the end. For me, I'm such a performance-based act. For me, if I didn't perform well, it didn't really matter what the outcome was. I knew what I had to work on. So whilst, yes, my first world championship was in 1997, I was only 14. That just was the starting point for me. Every world title I won up until my last one in 2019 or 2016, I have articulated my performance and tried to make it better every time. So it's just focus, it's working hard, it's being patient. It's not because you build up a name and people expect a performance from you. It's knowing that there's nothing to expect from a result. You know, the result at the end was the novelty. Yes, everyone wanted to win that championship. But for me, if I knew my performance wasn't good enough, I had to put in that prep work even more the next week. So for me, the discipline's there, but the passion inside me to be a good performer outweighed the result. Now, the result, yes, inspired me to continue to go. But for me, it was those world titles in every grade I entered that continued. And I suppose I won in 1997, I won in 1999, 2000 and 2001. And then I didn't win again until 2012. So those period of years were not difficult, but that was the time that I had to go back to my basics and say, what am I about? I've had maybe 6-7 years of winning constantly, and I had to take myself back to the drawing board. Now, for me, a world champion isn't just about winning that one contest. It's every contest before that. It's about your consistency. And I was about consistency. I had to deliver every week because that's what people expected. The audience, my parents, the adjudicators. So for me, I was 5 times consecutively second before I won. So that win for me was almighty. I had officials crying because they were like, you've done it, So I literally had this, kind of build up to my one in the seniors. And that for me actually made it more special.
Yeah,
So you mentioned obviously there's the discipline side of it and how disciplined you've got to be. How do you balance that out with your personal life and the teaching and your own stuff you have to do yourself? Have you got any strategies, or is it just time management?
It is, and as Mark said, I would have good organizational skills. I think you have to be in order to co-produce events and be part of that process. But for me, I have a zest for life. I love getting up in the morning and going and do my day job 9 to 5, coming in, getting maybe a quick bit to eat, and then straight out again 6 to 8 to teach, and then my own time 8 to 9. Then whenever I got married and had children, that was another new full-time job. So I was trying to juggle bits of everything, and work's been great because I have been able to continue my hobby to the fullest of potential. There's many a time I've questioned whether or not that could maybe take over a wee bit more than the job and go part-time. But for me, it's just about making sure that the things that make me happy and my passion, whether it is at the workplace, whether it's with my mace in my hand, or whether it's in a corporate event, that all of them are done to the best of my ability. And that's, I suppose, that's how I get up in the morning and plan out my day.
That's great.
Yeah, I love it. So I know that you're involved with numerous things, and you just rattled a few of them. And I think one of the first time we really got to connect professionally and personally was through the tattoo scene. Yeah. And I know that you're involved with multiple tattoos, some locally, some internationally. How did that start to come into your story?
I have made great friendships in the pipe band world, so it was a very natural progression whenever I would have been travelling with Billy Jordan. He had a Scottish drum major tattoo group, and he asked me to be part of that. We went through tour Germany, different places. So as I went through those different places, people were like, "Can I connect with you? You know, I would really like you to be part of our team." And at the time I was still very young, and you know, you have those loyalties to those, but then at that point I was like, do you know what, I really could take, you know, myself on a different journey and really, you know, progress that independently. And then an opportunity came up in Avonch the year I won the world, so 2012. I was contracted in to teach a workshop and then use that teaching to produce a show at the end, which was the tattoo. And 10 years later, I done my 10-year, well, the contract was extended, and I did my last show with them in 2019. So it was a wonderful opportunity. And in that, then loads of different opportunities came up because of your presence, whether it be social media or through different people sharing that story of having Paula there. It's different having a female in that senior position, especially if they're non-military. So I loved those different challenges and those different experiences that I gathered through the way. And as I said, I've met loads of wonderful people on that journey that I've built my experience on as well.
Well, I think me and Mark have mentioned on numerous occasions how, you know, how tattoos are great for connecting people, you know, people you've never met before, or maybe you've met online but never actually met in person, and connecting together. So you know, you've definitely got a zest for life. It's blatantly obvious in this call. So what point was it the point where you said, I'm now going to start teaching? And what was that a hard thing to do, or was it just the right progression, and was it the right time?
Yeah, I was approached by our local community. It was like a children's hub. It was like an extracurricular they were looking to do. They got funding from the Ulster Scots, and they had said, Paula, can you come and teach music, teach drum major, if it's piping, drumming, whatever. At that time, there was, you know, a decline in the youth around our area, so that actually would have led bands and been a drum major, and actually knowing the art of what music was in that term. So I took my mace one night and I taught voluntary for, I think, about 2 years. Then there was a wee bit of funding came, and then you were paid for a few months, and then the kids, it was stopped, but the kids loved it, so they were like, we want to continue this. Mums were like really supportive, and so then my class started. So I was about 18. Yeah, started 18, and then we hired a hall, and I had my first world champion in 3 years.
Wow,
So
that's
it was
incredible.
wonderful, and that's literally where it's been. The children have come, and those that have continued to stay have made it the full length. And now
Yeah.
the pupils that I have are now in the seniors, from 5 years old, join it.
That must be amazing. You know, having won the world championship yourself, and then having one of your students go up and, you know, and reach that pinnacle as well in such a short space of time. That must be a great feeling.
It's immense. At that time when that first child won the worlds, the second chap that won, we actually won it together. We won it together in 2012. He won the juvenile and I won the senior. And you can tell by anyway, there's a photograph and it just tells 1,000 words. I was happy for myself, but this chap worked so hard and we won it together, which for him, he was like, this is insane. Because I myself won my first worlds with my tutor. Al McBride and I won the same year in 1997. So I was able to replicate that with one of my pupils. So
that's incredible.
What an amazing story. I mean, that's incredible. I think you always talk about these ideas, you know, mentorship, people looking out for each other, passing it on to the next generation. And I think the three of us know how powerful that is. If we want to set up the world and we want to set up society to be better than what we had it, we know that we have to give forward and we have to give it to the next generation. And this is something we've talked about, Paula, is this idea of in Washington being kind of in the belly of the beast in DC, having this power of community, this power of education, this power of the arts is something we're really driving to have. And so these stories that you're sharing for us, are so inspirational of saying, okay, in the Washington tattoo, as we build this is one of the key concepts are these juvenile or these junior workshops to get kids involved with music, with drum majoring, with marching. And so just as you said, some of your greatest friends, some of these trips around the world all came from the act of the arts and music. And so I know I'm really excited to see you become a part of this ecosystem. Stu has come on board, and honestly, having you come to DC in the future and be a teacher, help us do some workshops, that's something we're really excited about.
And for me, teaching is where yesterday I was teaching for the rehearsals for this local tattoo we're doing, and I haven't had my mace in my hand from before Christmas, and I came back in, and how I felt is unexplainable, because that for me is just my home place. It's somewhere where I'm most happiest. In the rain yesterday, it was windy, but I was at my happiest teaching what I adore. And those children that I was teaching were like wee sponges. They were loving it. They were like part of that process. And for them as children being involved in this, even though it might be one wee girl, it's her first event, so you could see the timidness in her. It's like, come on, let's go. This is amazing. And they were like, oh my goodness, she's so excited. But I was, even though I've done so many tattoos, international. This is a local charity event. It's completely voluntary. For me, I get as much out of that and put as much passion into that. And to see those children react with that, it makes it for me. I couldn't care if it was never went any further than that. That's what makes me do it.
Paula, obviously we spoke about the World Pipe Band Championships and your students going up. Is that scene a competitive scene? Like, is there any rivalry, or is it all everybody friends, or does it get quite serious when the competition comes?
Yeah, part of my teaching is I individually teach each child. So whilst I have my class, I home into each of their weaknesses and what they need nourished. So each child, whilst they're given a platform and a routine that I devise and choreograph for them, it's up to them to deliver. So for me, whilst I love them all being really good pals and best friends, and that's what they are, but as soon as their uniform's on and they stand on that line, they're for themselves. And that's what I was always taught. You can only be your best performer when you stand there and you focus on what you want. So many's the time at the World Championships, I never spoke. I was a real aloof. My parents would have known, just not speak to her, or I was in the zone. I nodded if I needed to say hello to you, and until I competed, that was me. All right, okay, let's go. But I was always of the mindset that your passion has to be contained until you get in on that music starts. As soon as they shout drum majors, that's when Paula Braden came to life. That's whenever I wanted to show them what I was capable of. So I didn't, kind of get rid of any of that energy until that particular time. And that's what the kids that I've taught, I can see that in them. There's times I see them all standing chatting, which I don't mind. And as soon as I look and put my finger up and said, it's time to go, that means go and prepare yourselves, get your mindsets ready, focus on what you're there to do. And when you stand on that line, you're ready to give your all. So it works. It worked for me, and it does work for them. They all have major titles under their belt. So that's my only secret is allowing them that time to be friends, but also reminding them that they're there to put in their best performance, and that may the best person win.
Yeah. It's incredible. That's what my teacher, Nick Antonasio, would always say this. When you're practicing, you have to put yourself that drum is your world, and nothing can get in it. And it's your own headspace. It's your level of excellence. And he said, you could always be friends with everyone, but as soon as you start to play, it's game on. And he probably would say some other choice words, but
well, I have to be honest, maybe I say those too, but the only thing for me is for me to be a good leader, I have to set an example. and they watched me compete for so long and seen the different traits that I carried. And some people were probably, they could have criticised that and said, "Oh, Paula doesn't speak," but that was my game face. That was the way I prepared myself, and that showed in my results. So I didn't apologise for that. I wanted to be the best performer I could be, and if that came out with the first place, then I merited that and continued that way of working. So, and thankfully they've adopted that approach.
Well, I'd love to hop into that for a minute, just from a leadership perspective. Because I mean, you're talking about mindset, you're talking about preparation, these things. So do you do reading or listening to podcasts? Like, what are some things from a leadership perspective that you do to keep yourself growing?
Yeah, I read a fantastic book. It was around a rugby team, how to perform in excellence. It was the All Blacks. It was the most inspirational book I've ever read, and I go back to it. And I've actually highlighted certain paragraphs. I'm a very good reader, and I love different books that kind of draw me in. Whilst I'm reading, I will have my earphones on, and I'll also be listening to music. They're not always pipe band music, but quite inspirational music in terms of, that kind of reaches my soul and kind of reminds me of why I'm here and how big my presence can be, and builds on my confidence. Because you have to be honest, not all the time, and even through COVID, there was uncertainty. There was, times that you're not always at your best. So those are the things that I draw back to and remind myself, or watch like clips of a tattoo that I was most proud of, or times that I actually think, well, actually I could have done better in that. That's something that I'd want to look at. And I journal. I write down and the pros and cons of certain parts of a day, a week, a month. And those are the things that I ensure that I progress on, as a personal development, but also as a leader as well.
Yeah, I love that. I totally journal every single day just to get your mind on the page so you can see it, and no longer, it's not just stuck in your brain.
Yeah.
It's actually on something physical. Yeah, I love it.
And you have to be personally at your best to be a good leader. And you're only as good as the last time that you had communication with your team. So based on how they feel, and because you're dealing with under 18s, a lot of the time I had to be very mindful of their mindset in terms of what were they dealing with at school, how was home life. So I became not just their teacher, but their friend, their second mum, their aunt. I had a parent speak to me recently and say, "Paula, the child no longer drum majors. They're a fantastic dancer," and she had to choose. And they said, she was doing her GCSEs, and you had written like an inspirational quote for their sporn for a world title or world championship. And she read that before she went to do her GCSE. She says, "Your teaching just didn't teach them the art of drum majoring. It taught her life. It taught her that ability to get through times that she needed that kind of boost and that confidence." So that for me reminds me of how important my role has been, and that I never take that lightly.
Yeah, I'm guessing in the martial arts, there's a lot of stuff we learn in the arts itself that can be related to daily life skills that we don't even think about. The preparation, the discipline. You just, without even knowing it, you're doing it. But it's other people that realize what you're doing, and that why you're doing that. How have you done that? And it's just something that you've grown up with, that you do on a day in day basis, that people don't even realize. We
And
get
that's the time. That's the time where I have to sit back and reflect and journal, because otherwise, people are complimentary, and people are like, even today, saying, "Oh, I can't believe I'm speaking to you. I'm this wee Paula that's a mum that does her everyday life, who has a passion, and thankfully have been successful and have wonderful opportunities." But I take that very much in my ease, because the way I look at it is, it's a hobby for me. It's just built on passion. I don't know how to function any other way. So for me, it's important of keeping my feet in the ground and doing my best every day, whether it's teaching, whether it's an event, or whether it's actually being a mum. So those parts are all very important.
So, for somebody who wants to become a world championship drum major, what sort of advice would you give? Because we get people from all over the world watching this podcast, and I guarantee there's definitely some wannabe drum majors out there. So, what tips and advice could you give?
For me, it is about understanding what you want. I know every child and person out there would love to be a world champion drum major, and that's always within your reach if you apply yourself and you understand your passion. For me, it's not about wanting just to be a world champion. You need to know what it takes to get there, and that's patience, that is practice, that is knowing your instrument, that is having a good support network. That's about having that belief in yourself, and those having a good mentor will help, yes, but unless you're on that journey yourself, I don't think you'll reach that end goal. You need to prepare yourself to that journey. For me, it's about consistency. I don't. You could practice every day, but unless you're practicing what you should be, you'll never get to the end goal. So consistency is key for me. You need to make progress, consistent progress, and getting better, and that comes down to the effort that you put in. Sometimes I find, because I was a champion drum major and I was successful for many years, people expected that from me, but more so myself. I expected sometimes to be better placed than I was. And that was a very internal, I suppose, learning that I had to adopt, because I needed to remind myself that I shouldn't expect it. I had to put the work in to achieve that. And sometimes that's kind of more prevalent now in these days, because with COVID and people are very busy, that practice time isn't just as probably to the forefront. So for me, it's about reminding yourself what you want and how to get there. And that's about that internal practice, patience, and working hard.
Yeah, so I suppose if you've got the correct mentor and you've got the passion, which obviously is the biggest element you need, then there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, and talent's one thing, but I have worked with children from the age of 5. I've even met a gentleman. This is probably a really inspirational story that I tell lots of people. A gentleman came to me on his 70th birthday, and he said, "I want to learn something new. Every year until I'm 75, I want to learn something new." I was thinking, my goodness me, use wee frail hands. And I was like, oh my goodness. I said, well, I'm ready. I can teach an old dog new tricks, not a problem. And he came to my class. Now, part of that teaching, I asked him would he be happy if I brought my younger students to watch and be part of that process, because I thought it was so important for them to enrich them, to say, look, this is an older man, wants to learn something that you maybe take for granted, that you could go out and lift your mace 30 times a day, where this man really is struggling to, kind of recall a basic. And for them, it was enlightening for them. But for me, I got such personal gratitude from it, because he had one day he came and he cut some plasters all over his hand. He says, because I practiced so hard this week. And I was like, I'm so impressed. I had him doing helicopters, high throws, side throws. And one of he moved away, and I moved away when I got married, and one of my pupils was quite close to where he was. I says, like, would you mind? She's now world champion. Would you like her to give you a few lessons? Broadened her kind of teaching experience. But for me, that always reminded me of, you can home in on the young, but there's older people there that still have that kind of ambition. And whether you're talented or not, if you listen to the instruction and you put in that practice and hard work, you could do what Patrick did. He made it. He never went to competition, but he paraded the streets. He had an audience that loved the fact that he tried something new and was able to throw it and catch it. Whether or not at a competition he'd have won it, it's irrelevant. It's not about the prize. It's about that journey.
Yeah,
incredible. Well, incredible. Well, Paula, we are so honored to have chatted with you today, and just would love to find out what's on the horizon for you. What's coming up new?
I have a few tattoos that I'm working on. One currently now at the end of March. Again, it's a charity local tattoo, so there's loads of local bands, and I'm co-producing that tattoo. So it's, again, enriching my experience with local artists and a different variety of things, not just pipe bands, but accordion bands, Irish dancers, Scottish dancers, soloists. And I'm actually incorporating a really different theme to this. So I'm putting in music from like a musical, so The Greatest Showman. So I'm having a singer alongside our drum major performance. So it's just really new, just something modern, trying to be a bit more innovative and, kind of bring a bit of a different touch to it. I also have workshops that I've been contracted to do. and that's home and away. So, and then I have my official adjudicating starts this year. So I'm judging a major championship. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That's amazing. Well, so I think at the Washington Tattoo, we feel that the International Tattoo Society, the world, it's one big family.
Yeah.
If you go to Singapore, if you go to Avance, Switzerland, you go to Northern Ireland, you go to the UK, you go to Australia, and you see the same faces there. So why don't you give it a shout out? What's the name of the tattoo you're working with, and how can we help?
Yeah, well, it's the Ballymoney tattoo. Certainly, we have a sellout for the Saturday night of the tickets, and we have about 60 tickets left for the Friday night. It's for two charities, Macmillan Cancer Support and the Community Rescue Service, that go out into the community and help people maybe with poor mental health or maybe have had an accident. For me, as I said, that's a completely voluntary role, but for me, I just get as much excitement from it, because for me, I can see the body that's raised and the work that does. So it's great to be part of that and see the difference that makes to people's lives.
Absolutely incredible. Well, Stu, thank you, my friend, for joining us today. And I think I cannot have a better co-host. So Stu, my hat is always off to you. I really appreciate your time, my friend.
No, it's my pleasure. It's great listening to all these different stories from all over the world and these, incredible individuals. So, the pleasure's all mine.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been a privilege as well. Certainly, Washington Tattoo, I've been following the feed on it, and it looks incredible. The amount of work and the artists that you see that are being part of it. I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic. I think there's going to be lots of events, so I hope they all run smoothly. And the upcoming one now in April.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Paula, you are part of the family now. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today. And everyone will catch you on the next episode of the Washington Tattoo Podcast. If you want to find out more information about Paula, where can they find out more information about you?
Oh, email. You can get me an email, Paula_Braden @yahoo.co.uk, or I'm a vivid Facebook user, so you can certainly contact me or as my friends like to say, have you Googled me?
I love it. Awesome. And folks, if you want to find out anything more about the Washington Tattoo, please look us up on www.thewashingtontattoo.com and look for our events. We have a bunch coming up in April of 2023 at the time of this recording, but we will have events all the way into 2024, 2025, and we are targeting 2026, which is the 250th of the United States. So we're super excited about that. Check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So Paula, Stu, thank you again so much for your time, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode.
Take care.
Hey everyone, this is Mark Riley again. We want to share a great opportunity with you to get your business name out to our listeners. We are looking for individual episode and yearly sponsors for the Washington Tattoo Podcast. So if you love music, history, and want to support military veterans, please take this step with us and consider being a sponsor. For information on that, please email marketing@thewashingtontattoo.com.